Checo retired like after a while when he was like behind the field. So there are rumors that apparently he was running low on fuel. Had the stewards found out, he would have gotten a penalty and also might be disqualified. That's the reason they pulled him out and retired the car. TGIF, 15th of July today. It's a Friday night. I am happy the week is over. How's your week? And how was your weekend? How's your weekend going, dude?
Really bad, man.
Why? What
It's
happened?
really sad. It's not a race weekend.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. Welcome to the Right Now show, guys. It's not a race weekend. It's the weekend between Austria and French Grand Prix. And we always look forward to back weekends, although it's not that great on drivers. If I wanted to do a lot of races this season, this, like 30 or more, and which was not good for drivers, and we were empathizing with drivers. At the same time, we are all like, hey, why is it not a race weekend?
Probably, I think FIA knows that it would take time to edit also podcasts. So I think they're giving content creators some time off.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff that happens in between races, right? I mean, we'll talk about it. So, what do you think about the race that happened in Austria?
Yeah, it was an amazing race, right? We got to see a lot of stuff that we haven't seen. Uh, but it was quite eventful. We expected probably that okay, fine. Would Ferrari come in a sprint race? Would Max kind of still hold position? But it kind of went along, right? And it ended with Leclerc on the radio saying, "Hey guys, our pace is good. We can get them tomorrow."
We'll get them tomorrow.
Right? Someone's analysis I said I did see, and they were saying that probably Leclerc could sense the tire wear, right, in terms of what Red Bull was having, and the sprint was not long enough, right, for him to get the overtake and a lot of it done. And he
Yep.
guessed that on the race day it would be much difficult for Max and team. But with that being said, I think race was fantastic. How would you describe the race in one word?
Best race of the season after Silverstone.
So rank 2.
Yeah, definitely rank two, because Silverstone was a little chaotic and that made it exciting for everybody. But this race, as such, was great. And finally, after exactly 3 months, Leclerc won a race. So the last race he won was on April 10th in Australia. And finally, he's back on Austria. And
Is
finally,
that the reason? Yeah, I was just
yes,
going to ask you, is that the reason you're wearing proudly Ferrari?
absolutely. I'm so glad I'm wearing this. Actually, it's a gift from a friend. So shout out. I'm so happy. I'm especially, like the yellow logo one. It's really nice. I try to search for it like in so many other places. You find it, but then there is you don't get the simple fan t-shirt that you want, right? This kind of. So finally got it. I'm happy, really happy. But speaking about Charles Leclerc, what a performance, right? What a performance right from the sprint weekend, sprint race. The way he came back, the way he delivered, like whatever he had promised that we'll get them tomorrow, and he got them tomorrow. Not one, not two, but three overtakes. Luckily, Ferrari was quite proactive with their strategy and they were responding to chess moves that Red Bull were playing. And Red Bull were playing really good strategies, like the tire deck was so high for them. They kept changing their tire. They went for a two stopper, right? And they almost got Charles in spite of the heavy tire deck in the end. But somehow, Charles held him off. That was quite fun to see and totally an A plus drive from Charles and probably an A drive from Max.
Do you think Ferrari's strategy wasn't tested really, right? Because we know in lap one, Russell kind of did a Hamilton on Perez, right? He pretty much ended his race from that point onwards. Red Bull were kind of handicapped in terms of strategy because they just had one car, right? So you can't really play strategy game. So do you think
Yep.
it? We didn't see the exact strategy that Ferrari could have probably been tested out with.
Yeah, absolutely. Had Perez been there in the fight, in the front, it would have been things would have been quite different. Checo was quite unlucky actually, right? He didn't have a good weekend at all, right? Very bad weekend. He qualified P13, I believe, and he went on to recover in the sprint race, came P4. His race ended in the very first lap.
It yeah, pretty much
First
ended
lap.
in the first lap. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, George got a penalty for the incident. But if you look at Jolyon Palmer's analysis on the crash that happened, right? He says that the space left by Checo for George was very little. Basically, Checo had a lot of room on his left, and Russell, he exactly took the apex, and he tried his best to turn right, but there was a lot of understeer, and that's the reason he went a little left. But had there been a little more space, had Checo left him a little more space and gone from a little more out, there would have been a room for two, and we could have seen a clean racing action. But that didn't happen. And he actually compared the incident to the Hamilton Albon incident from 2 years ago. And that incident was much more ahead of the apex, and Hamilton didn't leave Albon any space, and uh, which where the penalty was much deserving. Similarly, even the way Gasly outed Vettel, right? I think Vettel went out in a sprint race and in the final race. So what Gasly did definitely deserved a penalty, because again he was similar to what Hamilton did to Albon, and he didn't leave enough space. But in George's case, when he said it's a bit harsh, it was truly harsh, basically. So that is not my analysis. That is Jolyon Palmer's analysis, and you guys should definitely check out that video. Brilliant frame by frame analysis by him. And yeah, basically that's where Checo's race ended, and Russell, he dropped back to P19 after his penalty, and his recovery from P19 to P4, very impressive, right?
It's interesting actually you mentioned about leaving room for two. There was no room for two Ferrari cars on the race day because the great reliability of Ferrari strikes again. this
Absolutely.
time with this time with Sainz engine blowing up and then it was just going backwards. It was scary. I thought it was going to like I thought is he going to get out in time or what was he doing, right? Sainz. But it's so unfortunate that they're again back with reliability issues, right? And
Yeah,
it's not that okay. Sainz was the only one who faced it, right? And it was all going smooth sailing, right? For Charles, and then there comes the radio call, right, with him just saying,
yeah.
"Hey, I'm not able to manage my pedal."
There's that famous Key and Peele skit where I think it's about browser history, where Jordan Peele is like literally sweating when his wife asks him about his browser history and things like that. And they obviously like exaggerate the comedy, right? So he's literally like pouring. So that's the meme that comes to my mind whenever I see like Clerk's radio coming on, especially in the last few laps. It's quite scary for a Charles Leclerc fan and a Ferrari fan. And it was really unfortunate, like you said, like the constructors, such a good opportunity for Ferrari to capitalize and close the gap to Red Bull. And the way Mercedes has been reliable, they have not been fast at all. Actually, like they're just getting fast now in later in the season, but they're nowhere as fast as Ferrari or Red Bull. But they're so reliable, very reliable, right? So it is very unfortunate that things had to end that way for Carlos, where we are about to see a really good overtake on Max. Uh, it literally was car loss. He couldn't make the overtake, and one more DNF for him, which is very sad. And also, the second bit that you mentioned was the fire itself, right? Very scary fire, and the whole meme about this Marshall just walking off from there. He's like, okay, his fire, he'll deal with it. Like, what the hell is going on? I mean, like, I'm pretty sure there is an inside story to it as to like why the Marshall didn't come. Maybe he didn't have the necessary safety gear with him or something. But at that moment, it looked like, okay, I don't give a fuck, and he just walked.
But it was such a sad day for the navy blue people, right? Which is Red Bull. Their tire deck was like in different level. Max was just out there, not knowing what to do. He was just a
Yeah,
sitting duck, basically, right? Ferrari's overtaking him 3 times, right? Carlos is coming at him, and the poor man can't do shit. He doesn't have his fellow driver where they can even play a strategy game. It was a pretty sad race, I think, for Max, right? And it was a wonderful race, like you mentioned, for Ferrari. Lost opportunity though,
yeah.
right? But those final moments was so good, right? Even for probably a non-Ferrari fan, it was the most nail-biting last 10 laps or so, right? And such a relief that Leclerc kind of brought it home after so many run-ins with bad luck.
But if you look at it from a Ferrari, like a constructor point of view, right? Um, Although their strategy was on point this time, no mistakes as such. Uh, the points they scored in uh, Silverstone were more than what they scored here in Austria, and this is like including sprint, which has like much more points than normal race. So it is sad that when a car retires because of reliability issues, etc. And also there are rumors that Checo retired immediately after, he not immediately, like after a while when he was like behind the field. So there are rumors that apparently he was running low on fuel, and had the stewards found out, he would have gotten a penalty, and also might be disqualified. So that's the reason they pulled him out and retired the car. But they're just rumors, right? I don't think that's true. And but yeah, Twitter is full of these kind of rumors and a lot of shit. You should see the fights. Right? You are more active on Twitter. Like the LH44 team versus MV1 is like mental.
Yeah, true. But I think Hamilton drove an amazing race, right, for Mercedes, considering that they were pretty much nowhere, right, in the start of the season to what they're coming at, right. Every race we see them. I think you talked about it in the last episode, right. Overall, if you zoom out and see, it is still that the Mercedes is going higher, right? At an
Strength to
overall
strength.
graph level, yeah, they're just going strength to strength. Even though Hamilton kind of had a pretty lonely race, right? He couldn't really attack one and two. He was just sitting in the third. I believe he said in an interview, which I saw, he was saying that, hey, it was so lonely that I was looking at the screen, right? He was
And
having a
watching
fan
the duel
experience.
between Max and Charles, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He did say that.
Yeah, so it was a lonely race, right, for Hamilton. But I think a particular team that didn't have a lonely race and more probably a fireworks filled race was Haas.
Yeah,
Also, they are Ferrari customers, so all the Ferrari kind of customer teams did well. But Haas, man, what a show! I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes, my nose, my ears, and my mouth. Pretty much all my senses were out, seeing that they're actually literally holding up Hamilton, and Hamilton is literally like God. Like, what the hell? And we were also like, we would never probably see this day. Imagine in 2021 if someone said Haas would hold up Mercedes, we would have laughed. We would have rolled on the floor some 20 times and laughed. But what a strong showing by Haas. Double points again.
absolutely.
Uh,
And I think I like the character arc of Mick Schumacher right now. Uh, like he
you're
started
talking like a
off,
true, you're talking like a true ad man or a true filmmaker, right? But
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's really interesting. Like when he came in, he was this quiet guy, and then he came to be known as the wholesome guy who is very nice to his engineer. His engineer is very nice to him. Like those cute radio conversations, and he was with Nikita Mazepin, and um, even Nikita Mazepin said that like his best friend in the grid is Mick and things like that, and we saw that wholesome side of him, and suddenly in the sprint race where he was pissed off about the whole strategy of Kevin not being in a DRS range, somehow, somehow, and even the post race interview, he was like not very happy about it, and uh, somehow it reminded people of Michael Schumacher, and they were like, "Whoa, now you're talking, my boy. Now we're talking." Like slowly, this guy's getting comfortable in F1, and we can see probably a team dynamics change. Like Magnussen has been pretty decent this season, outperformed Mick Schumacher almost till every race till Silverstone, I believe. And suddenly you see this guy wake up and give a fight to, uh, past champions and current champions, like the way he fought uh, with Hamilton in the first few laps. There was that in the first turn, I feel, of one of the initial laps, Hamilton just skid, and he just took the opportunity and overtook, man, and that was like incredible to see. And even in the past race, the way he was fighting Verstappen, that was epic. And yeah, truly deserving driver of the day. And speaking of mix fights, I think the 5 car fight that we saw,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable. So though I think regs have been working when like you feel that regs have been amazing when you see such moments right on the racetrack, because I don't think last time anywhere you could see such scenes apart from probably the first lap.
Hopefully the regs are working and we see more closer action, right, in the coming races. Probably getting to the halfway mark of the season, the teams would have a lot of time in their hands to kind of get things up and running, right, in the summer break. And maybe we have closer racing in the second half of the season, right? But it's interesting you mentioned Mick as a driver of the day, but I think someone else who got a lot of spotlight this whole weekend was the stewards. Yeah, because of the track limits. I think that was all over. Be it in F1, F2 also, they were just track limit penalties being handed over like that. There's a meme, right? In which DiCaprio is
DiCaprio
throwing stuff.
throwing money, yeah.
Yeah. They were just throwing 5-second penalty points just like that, right? I mean, it was unfortunate. The most unfortunate was, I think, probably Paris, right? In Q2, he clearly went out of the line, but they should have just handed over the points there, right? But what happened was he went to Q3 and then he was demoted.
The thing is that he said that, okay, but it's not just me, right? I mean, there had been a lot of people who were exceeding track limits, but I don't know if I like checked, put a microscope and checked whether everybody's crossing line. And the Q3 lap of Verstappen itself was very, very, very close, right? He was like almost just touching the white line by millimeters, and that could still be debatable, right? It's a very gray area, in my opinion. Either have a very foolproof system in place or give a little bit of leeway, like you can't simply throw track limit penalties at people like that. I mean, like, the system right now is, I don't know how foolproof it is. I think it's just based on the replays that they see, right? And probably a sensor or something which tells you that, like, hey, this guy didn't touch the white line at all. Like similar to how you have in tennis, which actually shows whether the ball pitched on the line and went. So something similar to that. But again, tennis is just a few yards. This is like, like miles of area here. So obviously the cost is going to be insane,
I
probably in
also
the
think it
future.
is. I also think it is silly. Hey, yeah, you went 1 millimeter that side. Like, okay, yeah, here's take your 5 seconds of penalty. Enjoy, right? You
Yeah.
can't. It kind of become like a school kind of a thing, right? Oh, you went 2 millimeters that side, right? No, I went. No, I did not go. My end of my tire was kind of just like 1 millimeter this side, so I escaped it, right? Because here you're dealing 5 seconds of penalty also impacts the race, right? It's not that you handing over a penalty and nothing happens to the race, right? It could really screw up someone's race, and then it screw up someone's points, and it's at the end of the day all are playing for your position in the championship, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be probably interesting to see what happens with this whole thing, whether FIA would kind of take the same approach, right, or say, hey, no, let's drop this thing, right, because it can kind of just start escalating a lot. And we
Yeah.
know in F1 especially, if things start getting heated up, right, in terms of driver championship or like or your constructor championship, This thing can really blow up, this millimeter business
Yeah.
that the FIA is looking at. But yeah, but it was an eventful race, I think. Apart from the
Also,
track,
apart from this point about the track limit that you said, right? Um, I feel like last year the penalties were lesser than this year. It has been there consistently through the years, and especially in Austria, right? Because of such fast corners that we have, right? So people almost like slide in and come in. So it has been there, but the thing is, this year the tires are like much bigger, right? And it's also, I believe, a little bit, a tiny bit to do with the visibility of it. Um, that's what like I read somewhere. Uh, Not so much, because like the drivers have already gotten used to it, and not so much, but it is there. And also like it's not something that's done on purpose, right? I mean, it's thing like fraction of seconds. Like if it happens, it happens. So like it's, I wouldn't say like 100% in control of the driver. Um, Probably 90%, 95%, but that 5% sometimes, like uh, it's anything can happen, right? They're not robos. So yeah, that's about track penalties, and I think three people got it right. I mean, uh,
yep,
Gasly and who else?
Gasly, Norris, and Joe.
Yeah, Lando had a pretty bad race, out of points.
McLaren sucked big time, right? And it's just a shame that such a good team like McLaren is kind of really struggling, right? Whereas teams like Haas, it's not right to say teams like Haas, but eventually, if you compare the last few seasons, at least they're kind of getting in and they're fighting for points, right? McLaren with such a good driver lineup, I mean, they have their own issues. Ricardo is not performing as they want to, right? Norris, even though he's such a talented driver, really the car is not supporting him. It's such a shame that these issues kind of plagued McLaren. But I think some other thing that was also shameful this weekend was the fan behavior. It was
Yeah,
such an unfortunate thing to actually see, right? That people were being abused on Twitter. I think this fight kind of continued, like you mentioned. It kind of again got into the whole Red Bull fight. People saying, "Hey, no, Red Bull fans are this way." Obviously, we don't know what is true, what is not true. But this it's a good thing that the FI has come hard, and there was this question of what to do with these fans, right? I
yeah.
mean, that's a question to you. What do you think that if someone being caught with this doing this stuff, what
I
penalty or
mean,
punishment to be given?
absolutely ban them from the races, right? And if they've done something inappropriate, then just hand these people over to local authorities, judicial authority, etc. But um, yeah, it's quite shameful, and the way it's put, right? Max Verstappen fans are being, that's like twisting the narrative, right? I mean, someone someone is bullying somebody, somebody's abusing somebody, and they happen to wear, whatever Red Bull jersey, or they happen to be Max Verstappen fans also. So it's, how narratives are twisted, right? Especially living in this country, we all know how things are interpreted. So there's always sections forming in the sport. Like I think more than being, yeah, I believe that there is a passion, there is a love when you support your favorite driver, favorite constructor. But when you zoom out and look at the sport, right? I mean, it's such a beautiful sport. Uh, in Canada, when Max won, right? I was a little sad that Carlos couldn't make the overtake, but the level of Max's driving, it gave me so much joy. I'm like, wow, man! Like, so I think sports beyond a point, it shouldn't become like, it shouldn't turn like super serious. It is something to give you joy, and like favoritism and all begins. I understand the passion increases like crazy, but it also sometimes tends to bring hate amongst fans, right? So I don't know if the fans bullied them because they were not Max's fan or not, but whatever it was not good. It was quite shameful, like you put it. And the second thing which a lot of drivers spoke about was the cheering when people are crashing. right? So when Hamilton and Russell went off in the qualification, both the cars, both the Mercedes went off. Lot of fans cheered there, right? If you went off normally and then they're cheering, okay, still understandable. But if you're like, if they're going and crashing, it's not cool, right? I mean, it's again that Verstappen crash in Silverstone that happened. Yeah, so a lot of drivers said that, Hamilton, Russell, and Ricardo also showed his support, saying that, hey guys, this is not cool. You can't jeer like that. So speaking about Ricardo, quite a big news, right? Yeah, what do you think about that?
He pretty much shut all the rumors. There were talks that whether he'll leave. I mean, it's sad that a driver of his caliber is not being able to perform, right? And like he put it rightly, he said, "Hey, look, 2 years ago when I joined McLaren, you guys said I was one of the best drivers around, right? It cannot be that
Yeah,
in within 2 years I forgot driving. That's not the situation. So, but it's good that he's actually kind of coming back, and that's what we want to see in sport. I mean, I so liked what you said, which is sport is all about joy. Sport is all about stories, and definitely we want a story where someone really is punched down, right, in terms of a situation like Ricardo is, and he really climbs back up, right? And that's what sport gives us. It gives us a hope, right, that anyone down, it's very easy to walk away, right? So it's
yeah,
very easy for Ricardo to walk away, right? And probably he would be interested, being a very marketable driver that he is, he will
true.
get in somewhere. But that's not what sport is. Sport is actually about a lot more, like you mentioned. And I think it's good that he's coming back.
Yeah, and actually, like when you speak about Ricardo, like the other driver that comes to my mind, the parallel that I draw is say Vettel. Okay, now Vettel is also performing okay, but the thing is, no, Ricardo's teammate is Lando Norris, and Vettel's teammate is Lance Stroll. So if you look at it, Ricardo is still above in the points when compared to Vettel, but Lando is being so, like comfortable with the car, and not this year, but last year more so, that people are starting to doubt Ricardo. The difference between the drivers is so stark, right? Whereas in case of Vettel is obviously like outperforming Stroll, but still the car that he has is like quite shit. Like it's quite bad, right? I mean, so he's also struggling with the car, and the poor management that we've been reading up about, Lawrence Stroll's poor management, and it's quite sad. And actually, speaking of Lance Stroll, I think in like last, I think 2-3 races ago, Lance Stroll finished P17 in qualification, and Bill Buxton tells him, "So Lance, what do you think? This is the best qualification result you have had in the last 4 races." and, and that was so cheeky, obviously, like very sad. But Lance took it on his chin, and like Lance, when he gives his race reviews, it's mostly 10 seconds. Yeah, the race is bad. He just summarizes his race in like 10 seconds. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was great. And that's it. Like, that's his summary. Yeah, it was quite sad. And he's also not performing well, right, at the moment. Not at all.
But I think post the race, there was quite some news, right? Off the track. There are two specific news. One is a rumor, right? Which is that F1 would be going back to South Africa. That's a good news. One way that we have one more race to see and not complain. But it's a bad news for drivers, obviously, more races.
Yeah.
And there's one more news of our greatest man, the director of 2021 season, the puppeteer, right?
Yeah.
Or
He's like literally the director of the movie of Abu Dhabi.
the man is left FIA and he is going back to Australia, Mr.
To
Michael Massey.
that itself is like a huge debate on its own, and we'll not go into that. We've had like enough content on that on the internet, but I mean, he was wrong in making some decisions, but since the consequences were so high that he faced all the possible backlash on the planet Earth. So apparently people say that he was one of the really good race directors apparently, but his luck was so bad that okay, Verstappen's luck also was so good that uh, anyway.
Someone else's luck, which which might be bad is probably the Circuit Paul Ricard, right? Uh, there's a talk that they might not be there next year, right? It might not be included in the calendar along with Spa. It's such a shame again
Yeah,
because such beautiful circuits, both of them, right? But that's what it is. A lot of contracts are expiring. F1 wants to move, right, to different countries, and I just hope they get good racing in good circuits. We don't really want racing in some flat circuits.
we
We
don't
know that,
want straight
okay,
circuits. Enough. We're done with all this Miami night race and what's all
Vegas.
that Vegas and no man, enough. Get us some good proper circuits. Uh, enough of like street circuits. Like it's too
I think
much.
India should be there. India should be there. I so want, there's such a fan base in India, right, that they can tap into.
So, like speaking of India, we have a new Formula E racing circuit that's coming up, and the race is happening in February 2023. Right, February 11th is the Formula E racing race. So, the circuit uh, is in a shape of a penis. It is so funny, man. Okay, it's like a T, but um, you know, it's shady, whatever. It's peanuts, but still, there's racing happening. So cool. It's like so that's a good news for us that not the shape of the circuit, but like the race coming in India. So that's great. And yeah, Budh International Circuit is just lying there. Seb is just waiting to come back and win his fourth race there.
Bad news probably for Paul Ricard, right? Such a good circuit.
Um,
It's kind of similar to Silverstone, right? Has a few long straights. That part is not similar again, but it has a few long straights. But it's more or less medium to like long flowing corners, right?
Actually,
Uh,
slightly I'll disagree there. The thing is, Paul Ricard races had been very boring till 2019. The races were like quite boring and not much overtake. But the 2021 race, like when people didn't expect at all, it turned out to be one of the best races, especially because Mercedes was kind of doing quite well, and suddenly Max just like stepped up his game, and although he went off in the first turn, Red Bull's strategy was so good that he undercut Hamilton, and beautiful undercut. I think one of the best undercuts that I've seen. It was just by like milliseconds that happened. That's really nice. And Paul Ricard was a beautiful race last year, right? And very bad for Ferrari last year. Actually, both of them finished out of points, and they were very slow. But yeah, this year let's see who gets the advantage. Can you tell us about the circuit a little bit?
yeah, I think the circuit has two very long straights, right? Has two pretty much two DRS zones which are in those long straights. We would see a lot of cars, right, with lesser downforce, right? So you don't want to lose a lot of time in the straights, right? Similar kind of setup to what you have in Italy. It would be an interesting race to watch out for, right? One is that you could kind of draw parallels between Silverstone and Paul Ricard, right, in terms of performance. And I think even Christian Horner said way back in Silverstone that, hey, look, Mercedes is going to be really good in here, right, in Silverstone. And he also mentioned that they might be as well good in Paul Ricard, right, because it's very similar kind of circuits. So I think probably Mercedes could be the dark horse, right, in Paul Ricard, right. They might have lost it last year, right, in 2021, right, like you said, Max kind of took it away from them. But could they be the dark horse this year? That's going to be such an interesting thing to see, right? Apart from that, I think rest of the circuit has some medium corners and pretty much long flowing corners, and a very few slow corners. So it's going to be
Yeah,
an interesting battle, right? And especially in the mid team, I'm not really worried about what's going to be happening in the front, but the mid team battle is kind of starting to heat up.
yeah, true.
So it would be an interesting race to see what really happens, right? And like we spoke about track limits, that's going to be more interesting. So could track limits change the game in terms of who wins the race, what happens in the race. That would be one more interesting twist to the whole situation, right? But
Yeah.
I think all in all, very good to go back to France. It's not like we are going back or I'm going back, but drivers are definitely going back.
It would be pretty exciting race, hopefully in France. But again, like speaking of track limits, there is a runoff area, a lot of runoff area actually with that blue paint all over the place, right? And the surface of the runoff area is such that it will slow you down. It's not as pacey as the main circuit itself. So easy to go off to the runoff area, but it's quite difficult to get back in the same pace again. Speaking of tire strategy, the optimum tire strategy was actually two tire. Um, Basically, this time they're going for C2, C3, C4 compounds. So it's somewhere between Silverstone and Canada, starting with mediums and changing to hards. That was the strategy, optimum strategy last year. But Red Bull went for a two-stop strategy, and they changed the game actually last year, and they won the race, right? So which was pretty great, and Mercedes had quite a bad race. So let's see how these top teams perform, and let's see what the midfield battle brings us this year, right?
What
Let's
are
see.
your predictions?
Predictions here would be, I think this track also could be heavy on tire deck because of medium and fast corners, right? So if Red Bull haven't solved their degradation issues, and apparently the new setup in Red Bull is 10 kgs heavier, there are chances that there is advantage Ferrari. But again, Ferrari has reliability issues. Yeah, so advantage Ferrari here. I would go for another Leclerc win here. Leclerc was tapping, and once again we'll see a Mercedes on podium, and this time it'll be Russell. That'll be my prediction, and Mick Schumacher will finish in top 10 again. That's my other prediction.
One Ferrari, one Mercedes, and one Red Bull. I so want Russell to win. He's been off late flying under the radar. He's been driving very good. Also, the fact that he's higher on the uh, points in terms of driver standings than Hamilton.
Yeah,
But there's not really much talk about him. But it'd be really great to see them back. But I
yeah.
totally agree with you. It's going to be uh, quite tight on the top, right? And it's also be going to be quite tight on the top half of the midfield, right? Expecting great fight between Alpine and Haas.
Actually, Haas has been doing well, but it will be interesting to see if they're able to sustain the level of performance they've been getting in the last two races, right? So, because we have seen Haas perform in the first couple of races and then go back all the way back to P15 to P20, and then again they came back. So, it's a very oscillating and it's not consistent or reliable, right? So, it'll be interesting to see if they have finally made an upgrade that have brought them into the top tens, right? So that would be quite interesting. And same with like same thing applies to Mick Schumacher. Like he has been good in the last two races, but it'll be good to see where he goes from here. If I spoke about character arc, then it's just like beginning of the arc. Let's see how where it takes. From a rookie to world champion, you never know. So yeah, that's about Paul Ricard, and I think it's going to be an interesting race. I think this season we have been having quite some interesting races, apart from those where there were a lot of reliability issues, etc.
Bonjour. That's what I can say. That's the only French word I know.
Oui, oui, Pierre Gasly. Subscribe, to the Right Now Show F1 podcast.